Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, the land of Israel, in our beautiful, biblical, eternal, and indivisible capital, Jerusalem, since King David's time. So, yes, Jerusalem is our eternal, undivided, indivisible capital, but before Jerusalem was the capital of the Jewish people, King David established the capital of the Jewish people in Hebron. And we are honored today to have international spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron, and my good friend, Yishai Fleisher.
Howdy.
Shalom, Yishai.
Thanks so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure, but that's only one title, because Yishai has a second title with him right now, and that is that he is a senior advisor to the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and I wanted to have this talk with you. I've been wanting to have a talk in a program with you for ages, but this was a fabulous opportunity since you just came back from a really groundbreaking trip. I think the minister's first international trip since he became minister in this government to the U.S., mostly the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken. I saw New York, Florida, and D.C., which is that's a nice trifecta that I like to get also on my trips, and really wanted to hear your feedback. We just saw the headlines and the video clips, which was more about the sensational protests and Itamar's reactions, especially walking through Congress and the halls of Congress there. Some provocative protests about having him canceled in a shul, whether it was about that or not about that. But I myself wrote an op-ed and was vocal about the sad feeling I have that so many Jews still are disconnected from what I believe is authentic Jewish values, and they become too westernized to differentiate what Itamar Ben-Gvir represents to the Israeli people who voted for him to represent them in government, and they just spewed hatred and that he's a terrorist or supports that, and all these things that are like the guy, hate what he says or whatever, but he's representative of a large population of Israel, and that's totally ignored, and it's too much for a lot of Western-oriented Jews, not just in America, but even in Israel, to understand. You were there in the eye of the storm with him, by his side, translating his talks into English. Get going. What can you tell us about that trip that you want people to know the truth that didn't necessarily get out to the majority of the people reading the headlines or seeing those videos?
Thank you, Avi, and it's fun to be here with you. The truth is I wanted to do a show about this, but I needed to talk it out with somebody, so thank you very much for the opportunity. That's number one. Number two is that I worked on this trip for over a month before the trip, maybe 2 months actually before the trip, setting it up. So I wasn't just a translator. I really helped create that trip. I wasn't by myself. There were other very good advisors. We worked together and we created this trip. He tasked me with the job of creating this trip. The minister did. And we went first to Miami area. The trip had, before I actually go to where we went, the trip had multiple goals. The goals were partially professional. He's the Minister of National Security, i.e. police, civilian arms, prison service, and also firefighting. So we actually met in America with our counterparts, with the minister's counterparts in police, in firefighting, in prison services.
State and federal level?
It depends where. We went to state prison, we went to Miami police, we went to Nassau County Police. We went in Washington, D.C. We saw responders to earthquakes and stuff like that. So there was an element of professional ministry and strengthening bilateral security cooperation. So that was one element. Another element was to connect with the Trump administration and to send a signal that Minister Ben-Gvir is promoting the Trump plan for Gaza, including voluntary immigration. That was a big push. And then there was yet another one, which is to meet American Jews and for American Jews to meet the minister, because this is a minister who is a lightning rod, is controversial, but in fact, he feels that the media spins his image to his detriment, and in fact, he is much more reasonable in his positions, and that, as you just said, American Jews should hear it for themselves. And also, there was an element of, here's a man who doesn't fly abroad a lot, and went to see what America is, the ideas of America, some of the great ideas of America, including freedom and small government, etc., and to meet American Jews. So all these things were all, every day was filled with those goals, and also to normalize him as a political entity, but not just him as a person, but also the ideas that he stands for. Itamar Ben-Gvir is a successful politician, but he also stands for ideas that most of us share.
Right.
And so to normalize those ideas, we did meet with some protests and some energies that tried to shut us down, and the cancel culture. We did come up against the cancel culture, but that was the minority. That was the vast minority, and we got to do big things, including speaking at Mar-a-Lago, speaking at Yale. And here I have to mention Rabbi Shmuley Hecht of Yale, of the Shabtai Institute, and then got to do a podcast with Liel Leibowitz from Tablet Mag, and then 5 major synagogues in the 5 towns, and then finally down to D.C., where we got to meet with 4 high-level congressmen. And so this was a major trip. It was a major undertaking. There were a lot of changes in the middle. We also had, problems of itinerary leakage, and then that leakage would cause protests. Oh, and I forgot to mention one of the big things also was 770, and going to kind of the seat of Chabad, where he was met by 2,000 young supporters who just hung on every one of his words. And so, it was. I really have 2 different names for the tour. One name I came up with a week before the tour. It was Pesach, Passover, and I was with my family, and my kids and I, we love the beach. And my kids, we went to the beach, and I'd been working very hard for this trip and really didn't give the kids time. And I went to the beach, and the water was freezing. And my kids were in the water, and they were swimming, and they were like, come in. I'm like, ugh. And I really didn't want to go in. My body was like, it's too cold, and I can't deal with it. And this guy turned around right next to me, and he had a shirt on, t-shirt, and it said, more courage. More courage. And I was like, I need more courage. And I just went in that water, jumped in.
You just did it.
I just did it. And then I realized that this whole tour, I call it the More Courage Tour. It was more courage to say, I want to listen to this man. It was more courage to hear courageous ideas about Israel. And there was just, it gave courage to people. They themselves showed courage. It was just like a More Courage Tour. That was one line. But there's another line, which is Freedom of Speech Tour. You're not going to cancel us. We're going to talk. You don't have to agree. Let's remember that freedom of speech is a value of ours, of liberal society. And so there were really 2 different wings. One was, more courage. And the other one was, okay, we got to be able to discuss ideas in a democratic discourse type country and setting, and we can't allow ourselves to succumb to the bullies, the intellectual bullies, and the cancel culture. So those were basically the 2 tracks.
So why don't we start with the issue that got the most headlines, the most sensationalism, especially on social media. You can clarify exactly what happened. And I'm glad you started by saying that he spoke at 5 synagogues in the 5 towns, because this news item has to do with that one large synagogue in the 5 towns that last minute canceled on him. Yeah. And the 2 different lines that were going out there, it was canceled because the rabbi all of a sudden was sitting shiva, he lost a parent, and it had to be canceled. And then everyone else was saying, no, it's because of pressure, and they didn't want the attention. What really happened, and what can you tell us beyond that specific synagogue, the reactions that you received as a response to the cancellation and the voices that were very anti Itamar Ben-Gvir even being allowed to speak to the Orthodox community?
So, somebody asked me on last week, what were some of the surprising things that happened to you? And one of the most surprising things to me was when that cancellation of Young Israel of Woodmere happened, I would have thought naively that, okay, so one shul cancels on you. You're going to 5 other synagogues, Jewish houses of prayer, and like, okay, big deal. Like, okay, they had the reason, the rabbi, this, that, somebody put pressure on them. They chickened out. I didn't think it was going to be such a major thing.
Wow, when you were in it, you didn't
I was just like, okay,
it was cancellation.
Cancellation. I gotta like just work, make sure that our schedule is full. I didn't understand, and really, this was a big surprise for me that it went totally viral.
Right.
It really went viral.
Yeah.
And things, you know when you're in a thing that's going viral. Because you're getting WhatsApp.
What Yishai? What's going on? What's going on?
What's going on? And so I was surprised. I think a little bit naively. Maybe I'm the kind of guy who's like, when things like that happen, I'm like, whatever. You know what I mean? That's just my whatever. But we keep going. But it became a huge deal, and people like yourself and many others wrote, commented, tweeted, WhatsApped, and just like the conversation began. Now, what the truth is that it's actually a mix. The reason there was a cancellation was a mixture, I think, of both those things. I don't know all the details because I wasn't inside the shul there, but basically the rabbi's father, the main rabbi's father, did pass away, and he was in transit, and there was pressure to cancel from more liberal, progressive type of people in that establishment, in that shul and community, and so they canceled. Now, it was an offense. It was offensive, and it did hurt Minister Ben-Gvir to some extent. But we were speaking again in 5 other major synagogues, including Beth Shalom, which was it's a giant synagogue. There was 500 people, standing room only, hanging on every word. And so it turned out, so again, surprisingly to me, that the brunt of the what's it called? Backlash. Backlash. That's right. The brunt of the backlash came to that shul, and not to like Ben-Gvir, not to the minister. The minister was like, "That's too bad."
Sure.
But that synagogue that congregation was like flooded with negative coverage, and a lot of Jews were appalled that this major synagogue, which is very importantly a very Zionistic synagogue that sends tons of money and does tons of stuff for Israel, is a very pro-Israel synagogue with tons of good people, that specifically they couldn't stomach.
Stand up to the pressure.
Right, and that they couldn't listen to. And here's an important thing. Itamar Ben-Gvir is a person, but he's also a minister in the government. Where is the respect for the office, or what we call here in Israel, mamlachtiyut? Right. Like, forget.
Where's the open tent of the Jewish world?
Where's the open tent?
Like Hillel, you have to have the Jews and the Jewish organizations that are even anti-Israel to have a seat at the table.
Right.
But yet a proud Jew, even though you disagree with him, no. Right. That's that crosses the red line. In the Orthodox Jewish community for some. And
a proud Jew who also serves as Minister of Security in Israel, defending people every single day.
Right.
And whose life he has had 5 assassination attempts against him by Hamas. So here's a man that puts his life on the line for the Jewish people. So there was a lot of backlash. Not unto us. Finally, Rabbi Axelrod called Minister Ben-Gvir,
the rabbi
of the synagogue, and he basically apologized. And Minister Ben-Gvir very beautifully told him, "I love you, I hug you, I embrace you, I wish your father's neshama an aliyah. I have no qualms with you whatsoever, but your shul, your community needs to do some teshuvah, some repentance, because the affront was not against me, I'm nobody, but it was against the office of the Ministry of National Security, and therefore against the State of Israel, and that needs some teshuvah, some repentance." And the rabbi heartily agreed. I almost cried. I almost cried at the beauty of 2 leaders talking so respectfully to one another. And the rabbi was in a shiva time for his own father, and he takes the time to call Ben-Gvir, and he wants to mollify and to fix that affront, and he promised that he would. And I think that the Jewish world spoke. And at all the other events that we did in the 5 towns, there were tons of people telling us, we're from that shul. We walked 40 minutes to show support for the minister. We're embarrassed and appalled at what happened. We're not part of that. Again, I was very moved. Like, almost everything in that story surprised me. You know, I was surprised, and I was surprised that it was a big deal. Then I was surprised, you know, at the vehemence at which the backlash came to the shul, and I was surprised that, you know, how well the rabbi, you know, understood the situation. And in part, it's really about reading the map, right? In part, it's about reading the map. The map was misread by whoever made that decision to cancel. They just misread the map. They thought that maybe it's better to cancel and to avoid controversy.
Instead, they created the controversy.
They created a controversy. And another surprising element of them all was that the truth is the minister benefited from that.
Mm-hmm.
He benefited a lot. And there was another benefit, which is the conversation in the Jewish world is a healthy one.
100%.
Right.
And I'm glad that I took part in that. And the reason I took part in it is I'm all about focusing on the positive and the positive trajectory within the Jewish people today, especially through this war and the wake-up process so many Jews are going through, and strengthening their Jewish identity and religious, not religious, but being more connected to Israel because of this war and the growing anti-Semitism. And yet, every once in a while, when things like this happen, I believe it's important for me to add my voice, because it saddens me that my own fellow, in America, they're modern Orthodox Jews here, Dati Leumi Jews, very much still, no matter how Zionist and connected to Israel they are, and the same education that me and you basically went through, the day school movement, Orthodox, modern Orthodox synagogues, camps, even coming to yeshiva for the year, even well-learned, even more than a year, and even if they make aliyah, but somehow the Western mindset has taken over them and neutered an aspect of that natural Jewish pride to be able to stand up for ourselves, and the progressivism that surrounds us all within this Western cultural environment. So when that comes out, like it did here, and in all the different things that they were writing about, whether it was Anglos here in Israel who were writing, or Americans back in America who were writing and posting online, I just felt it was important to get part of that conversation and put it in there to call out so that people understand, okay, this is where they're coming from. This is the whole story, and better understand and why such support for Ben-Gvir and what he represents for Israel, and the work we still have to do, even within our own communities, our own Jewish community, even modern Orthodox community, to move forward as a Jewish people, to claim and reclaim our identity, who we're supposed to be as a nation back in our ancestral homeland. So yeah, so that conversation is very good for people who otherwise wouldn't necessarily know, or just feel the anger and, oh, he supports terror, he was a terrorist, and he had this picture, whatever. Doesn't make a difference, because there's a much deeper issue that needs to be talked about, and that gave the platform to be able to talk about it.
I agree with you, and I think that it's right that you chimed in, and that it made a conversation. It was an opportunity. It caused an opportunity to talk about, well, you know, how much do we support the state of Israel? Like, how much do we support the legitimate vote of the people? How much do we support a minister in the government? How much do we support policies? How much do we support instead cancel culture and media bias and an image that's created for us? I think that related to what you're saying is that people in the audiences were very surprised that this very controversial minister really says nothing controversial. In fact, he says things that are incontrovertible. What do I mean? He basically had like 4 main talking points. 1, citizens who deserve arms should get them.
And I personally know there are plenty of people in the 5 towns who over the past few years have purchased guns.
Certainly. And he made it a point to say that one of his political successes is that he's able to change the average of permits given out from 8,000 to 200,000. And that is not just people having guns. It's actually changed the response time to terrorism from 5 minutes to 43 seconds. So it saves lives. And in parentheses, I say to those rabbis who either poo-pooed Ben-Gvir or didn't let him speak, I'm like, this man saves Jewish lives. Like, respect him for that, for helping save Jewish lives. Like, how many of us can say that we have the opportunity to save really Jewish lives and to push back on terrorism? The other things that he talked about were that that the prisons for terrorists cannot be leisure hotels.
Which they literally were.
They literally were. There were bakeries inside the prisons, and they had these long showers, and
Water never was turned off.
The water wasn't turned off for 8 hours straight.
University degrees, television all the time, conjugal visits all the time.
Right,
like
and even elective surgeries.
Right.
You could get like a
all
rhinoplasty.
Free.
You have free stuff. Because you're like, well, my nose is not nice. So, it was insane. And he shut that down. And again, this is and nobody in the audience was like, I think there should be rhinoplasties for terrorists. Nobody said that. So whenever he would say these things, people would just applaud. Then he said, so basically the prisons, the arms, the right of Jews to have equality on the Temple Mount, to pray on the Temple Mount. And he did not, by the way, he did not couch that in building a temple or anything like that. He couched that in terms of equal rights. If an Arab can pray, shouldn't a Jew be able to pray in our holiest place?
Talk about that all the time.
Right. And then finally he talked about another thing that everybody applauded him, which is that he believes, and that Netanyahu promised him in the coalition agreements, that there would be implemented death penalty for terrorists. These were his talking points everywhere, and everywhere he just got standing ovations. It's just ironic. There was nothing controversial. And he didn't talk it in a controversial manner. For example, whenever somebody would ask him, what about Iran? What about the hostages? He's like, well, I'm trying to convince our dear Prime Minister of this policy. I think it's a better policy. But that's the way he talked. It was his talk was what we call in Hebrew mamlachti. Very respectful of the state institutions, not in a revolutionary sense at all. And so ironically, this very, very controversial minister just said things that were, as we say in Hebrew, shaveh lekol nefesh, like made sense for everybody. So that was, that's part of what you're talking about, which is, hey, can't we have that conversation open? We should be able to have that conversation open. And many rabbis said, we've got to hear from this minister. And I'll never forget the first rabbi that introduced him in the Five Towns Friday night, Rabbi Blumstein. And Rabbi Blumstein's like, one of my congregants sent me a letter with 6 reasons why we should cancel Ben-Gvir, and included in those reasons 6 videos. And I watched says Rabbi Blumstein, he's like, I watched every video, I read every paragraph, and I was convinced with every one of those, I was convinced even more that I should have Ben-Gvir speak. And that was really the attitude and the atmosphere. And I really think that we were able to achieve all those things, including, by the way, and this is important for me to say, is of the very few things that I advised the minister. One of the things that I advised them is that he also keeps his eyes and mind open to receive. Sometimes we as Israelis, we come in with a lot of bravado and we're not listening, but the truth is America has what to teach Israel. In policing, in prisons, and a million things. America knows how to do stuff. And so I said to him, let's be the kind of Israelis that have what to give, but also what to receive. Listen to the people, and he absolutely received it. He absolutely did, and in Congress as well, he just really listened, and I think that also earned him a lot of credit as a person who comes in to also fact find and to learn, and that's sometimes politicians don't do enough of that, and I think he did a great job there.
Amazing. So let's move on to, I guess, the other, what I would say, most interesting to hear feedback from Yale University. Yale University, the epitome of today's wokeism of the intellectual university system, growing Jew hatred on campus, and all in the name of this fake identity called Palestine and Palestinianism, which is totally anti-Semitism. How was the response to that talk?
First thing, I agree with the points that you made just now. You said it quickly, but I agree with all those things. Yale was a weird one. People were like, say what? And when we were in Mar-a-Lago, I recommended to the minister, I said to mention that we're going to Yale.
Right.
He's like, are they going to care about that? The Republicans there? And I'm like, watch, just try it. So he's like, and tomorrow we're going to Yale. And they were like erupted. They couldn't believe that he was taking the show on the road to Yale.
Yeah.
Yale was the brainchild of Rabbi Shmuley Hecht, who is an absolutely fearless educator and advocate. At the same time, one of the things that Rabbi Shmuley does so well is that he brings voices from the Israeli left, from the American left, and you just can't accuse Rabbi Shmuley of being one-sided. He simply gives voice to a lot of different opinions, and that's a very powerful thing. He, by the way, is squarely, against Palestine, Palestinianism, land giveaway, and all that. But he gives voice to a lot of different parts of Israeli society and American society. And he had this idea, and I was connected to him through Rabbi Danny Cohen of Chabad Hebron. We also did an event for Rabbi Danny as well. There was a Hebron thing happening there.
Itamar lives in Hebron as well as Yishai working for the
Right, I work in Hebron. The minister lives in Hebron. Rabbi Danny Cohen of Hebron. But Rabbi Danny told me, listen, you gotta meet this guy, Rabbi Shmuley Hecht. And he had this. And when I was first planning this trip, when I first heard that there was an idea to go to Yale, I'm like, kabosh, forget it. It's just such a stupid idea. Right. I'm like, we're just gonna walk into a den of hate, and there's no way we should do it. But when I got talking to Rabbi Shmuley and I saw that he had the logistical situation in hand, right. Okay, that he can ensure that it was safe, right. And that we wouldn't be
nothing to laugh at.
Right, not at all. And I was like, I didn't want this to turn into a circus.
Right.
So when I saw and I heard from him, and I'm like, this guy has got it down. And previous Simcha Rothman, Knesset member Simcha Rothman, had come to Yale and had worked with Rabbi Shmuley. And when I started understanding how solid it was, then I started understanding this is actually an opportunity. And Rabbi Shmuley kept saying, "We're going to break the dam. We're going to break the dam. We're going to bring Ben-Gvir to America and to Yale to speak, and he's going to be able to speak his stuff, and he's going to speak with students." And he ran it very interestingly. It was an off-the-record event. Inside was off the record.
Which means what?
Which means there was no filming.
No filming.
No filming. No
one could bring in any phones to record anything.
Right. Recording was illegal. It was an open conversation with students.
Is that so students can feel comfortable?
Exactly. So
wow,
that it wouldn't become a media
very
event.
Smart.
It was very interesting, and
very
at the same time, since that was one of the few open itinerary events, protesters at Yale did gather, and at some point the minister went outside and they booed him and all that kind of stuff outside of the room. Inside the room, there was 150 students, part of the Shabtai Institute. They were all invited in, and they had a great time. We had an open and fair conversation, tough questions. Minister Ben-Gvir did a great job with all those things. I translated, but outside there were protesters, and they were so-called pro-Palestine, etc. But one thing that bothered me and bothered our security is that they were allowed to throw bottles, water bottles.
Oh, well, I saw those videos.
Yeah,
outside.
Throwing water bottles? You're throwing water bottles at a minister of a foreign dignitary? And the police are just standing there.
Nothing.
I'm like, that is assault and battery. That's dangerous. Right now it's water bottles. Maybe they're filled with acid. Maybe it's a rock inside. Maybe, what are you doing? And our own security was just like, what is with this police?
Oh.
And
was it university police or was it
university
local?
police? University police, and they were they let this stuff happen,
wow.
and that is not freedom of speech.
Right.
That's freedom of violence.
Right.
But it went off well, and it's important to understand also that Minister Ben-Gvir, he uses conflict to his advantage as well. Meaning to say, he went out after the protesters, gave him the victory sign.
I saw that video.
And that was him being like, I'm going to come here, and I'm going to have freedom of speech. And he was successful there. And at the end, Ben-Gvir went to Yale.
So I actually don't care about the protesters. I'm more interested in hearing about the dialogue inside with the students. That you said 150 students. I imagine 150 students at Yale, they're not necessarily all right-wingers or people who would have voted for him or will vote for him tomorrow even after hearing from him. But, and I'm sure very intellectual questions. Are you able to give us a little more the type of questions and dialogue that took place and how they left after hearing him based on what you heard?
So he went through those points that I went through before, incontrovertible points. And he made those at length with his humor, and so there was really nothing to argue about. The one thing that came up, there's really two issues that came up. One was, did you in fact have a picture of Baruch Goldstein on your wall at some point, who killed all these Arabs? in Hebron, and his answer, as I've heard him say millions of times, is like, I don't believe in those things anymore. I was a young man. Since then, I became a lawyer, and then a Knesset member, then a minister. My opinions have changed. I am not against the Arabs per se. I am against the jihad, and I don't believe in those values. I'm not as vociferous. I'm just more reasonable in this time in my life. That's number one. And then the other one, which is a question that was repeated over and over again, different variances, was, why did you vote against the hostage deals? And his answer, again, kind of incontrovertible, is like, well, we know that the rate of return to murder and crime, recidivity, there's a word for it.
Okay, the revisiting?
Recidivity, whatever, I forgot. The
resuscitation of going back to murder after they're freed from jail.
Yeah, going back to crime. There's a fancy word for it, which I should have memorized but I didn't use that word there because I don't know if everybody knows it. But the bottom line is that the Shabak has a number of about 82 or 86% return to murder. And he's like, I feel for the parents of the hostages, but I'm a parent of all Israeli citizenry, and I cannot allow something that's going to endanger Israeli citizenry. And of course, he mentioned the Shalit deal, in which Gilad Shalit was liberated, but 1,000 terrorists were released, and amongst them, Sinwar.
Right.
So therefore,
who was in charge of the October 7th massacre, and many others.
For me and you, these things are obvious,
right? But they don't know that.
But people have not heard that, and basically that's it. You know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of. Those were the questions that were asked.
Hard-hitting questions.
Those were the hard-hitting questions. Some questions about Iran, but basically those were the hard-hitting questions. And again, he said things that were just sensical, plain, and he called for, as I said, the death penalty. And he gave examples of the Fogel family murderers who are in our prisons. And so he's just like, these people, should receive capital punishment. Right. So it was fine. The Yale thing was fine. It was good. And it was good to be there. It was good to be in New Haven. It was neat. And then from there, we went to Manhattan. We did an event with Tablet Magazine. And then from there, we went to Crown Heights. And then there was a completely different atmosphere altogether, which made me another surprising thing that surprised me during this trip was like, who is a Zionist? Like a little question like who's a Zionist? Because in Crown Heights, 2,000 young Bochrim students were just right there.
Right,
every word he said.
Yishai is now going to be clarifying because he's meeting the different aspects of the Jewish community, especially the Orthodox community,
right,
and the modern Orthodox Zionist community versus the more yeshiva, Brooklyn Jewish community, Black Hat, that doesn't necessarily proudly say we're Zionists.
They don't wave the flag.
And now he's saying, who's the Zionist?
Yeah, who is a Zionist?
Okay.
Is it the people who are like, yeah, we'll sell, we will stand up for Ben-Gvir. We love what he has to say. We want to hear everything he says, and he stands for Judaism, a strong Zionism, for strong Israel, for what the Lubavitcher Rebbe held, which is not to give away land, not to talk about giving away land.
Right.
So I was just like, who's the Zionist? Is it the modern Orthodox
who celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut?
Right, but who may not very well want Ben-Gvir to speak in their shul. And these guys who don't celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut,
right? But then they support him and his messages is going according to
and support him strong. So it's just I was just like one of those moments where you're like, like
makes you think.
I got to Buddha Park. We stayed in Buddha Park. First guy I see, literally the first Hasidic guy I see with payas.
Yeah.
He's like, "Are you Yishai Fleisher?"
No way!
I'm like, yeah. He's like, I watch everything you do. And like, I'm saying that, like, that really made me, I put in this thought, like, who is a Zionist? You know what I mean? Are the people who support a strong Israel? Or is it the people who, wave the flag? Anyway, the point is there was, I'm not gonna overspell it out. And really we weren't, and one of the things that I really liked about what the minister did was that he didn't come to give Americans a hard time. He didn't tell them make Aliyah. He didn't come to like teach them something. He came to talk about a strong Israel. I think he gave people courage, and I think he did a good job of like bringing people closer to him, to Israel, and to the idea of a strong Israel.
So before I go on to asking you about the DC part of your trip, I want to ask Yishai Fleisher, because he just basically said, like, the minister, Ben-Gvir himself, he didn't talk about Aliyah, or I guess what's going on in America, to think about Aliyah. He didn't go there at all.
Yeah.
Yishai Fleisher, based on what you were seeing in the various Jewish communities, New York, Florida, D.C., where do you see America, Jewish communities, Zionist, religious, Orthodox, modern Orthodox, in terms of waking up, in terms of thinking about coming home or sending their children home or coming to Israel for universities instead of going to the universities of America, on whatever conversations you were involved in or witnessing in front of you?
Everywhere you go, now I wasn't in the Reform and Conservative worlds so much, but everywhere you go, there's a tremendous love of Israel. The newspapers are writing about Israel. People are sending their kids here, if it's to the army, if it's to the year in Israel, if it's to the universities, if it's even to Shirut Leumi, National Service. You know, I see a ton of connectivity. I see that people are less than when I was a kid sure about the future of America. They're hedging their bets a little bit more. Everywhere I go, I always remind them, buy property in Israel. That's take that step, and that is something that that's a message that's easy to preach. It's good for your money. It makes sense. Gives you a piece of the rock. And so everywhere I went, I felt that. Oh, and you go into the stores, into the kosher stores. There's a ton of Israeli products. Right. So I feel that there's more and more connectivity, and October the 7th definitely woke up a lot of Jews to be more proudly Jewish, to take more stock in Israel in some way or another. And that's what I saw. I saw a lot of that, given truthfully that we were in a kind of self-selecting audience. I'll give you one funny example. We went to a relatively new high school in Fort Lauderdale Academy, Jewish Academy. And the rabbi was like a Syrian rabbi, and great, young people. But what was really funny is that they had this, on staff, they had this really cool black guy. And he had the microphone, and he's like, "Your minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, come on up!" And he gave him the whole thing, and he did it like as though it was some kind of boxing match. And that's what I saw. There's a lot of pro-Israelism. I saw flags everywhere, and I saw flags in people's homes, in the 5 towns and in Florida. And what I was blown away by, again, another little surprise, was that in the halls of Congress, there are these posters. Every 3 or 4 congressmen's office, there's a poster that says, "I stand with Israel." I'm like, hey, that's special. That's really cool. So, you know what I mean? I think that October the 7th definitely woke up and strengthened the connectivity. Does that mean that everybody's changing their lives? No, but it means that they're taking steps. And I've learned that in politics and sociology, it's about taking those good steps.
Yeah, it's one step at a time. All right, so that's a good segue into Washington. I saw you met a number of my personal friends in Washington, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, and
no, Mike Johnson we did not.
Oh, you didn't meet Mike Johnson?
No.
Okay,
we met with Jim Jordan, Brian Mast, Claudia Tenney, and Mike Lawler.
Great.
These are great congressmen and women. These are great folks. They love Israel. They want to work for Israel. They believe that they either believe that Israel is God's promise coming to fruition, or they believe that Israel is the just cause, or they believe that Israel is fighting the jihad for the United States. It's a spectrum, or they believe all those or some of those together. And they're great folks. We have a lot of allies in America. And frankly, we also have a lot of enemies in America, and these congressmen are working to find out how is it that American tax dollars went through USAID to fund the enemies of Israel from within.
Right.
So, for example, Brian Mast is working hard to identify where this money came from, how it got transferred to the wrong people. And so there is definitely a concern to find out the truth. We also met with some protesters. weirdly.
Oh, in the halls of Congress.
In the halls of Congress.
I think he's Women in Pink. What's her name?
Code Pink.
Code Pink you bumped into? Yeah,
I mean, I always wanted to meet that lady.
Did you?
You know what I mean? And there she was, screaming something. And Ben-Gvir used that opportunity to scream back at them and to say, you're the terrorists, you're the jihadists, you're the 9/11ers, you're the October 7thers. You guys are the guys. You guys are anti-Semites, jihadists. And he used that platform that they gave him, the halls of Congress, to yell at them. And again, that part is the more courage part of the tour.
Right. So touching upon the meetings with the congressmen and senators themselves, so I want to share an interesting anecdote from a recent trip that I was on. Part of the messaging I'm sure you give as well when I meet with these congressmen and senators is that the American support for Israel is not just important for Israel, it's important for America. In order for America to be strong, America needs Israel to be strong, right? So it's America's interest. And one of the biggest issues that we have in Israel is how dependent we are on America for munitions, military aid, etc., etc. Even though all the money they give us is spent in America, well, we found out in this war under the Biden administration, at a drop of a hat, that's it. They could stop giving us even stuff we paid for already. So the talk in Washington, when I was there a few months ago, is, okay, we don't even have 4 years because we have no clue what's going to happen in the midterm elections. We have a year and a half to do as much as possible to make Israel as independent as possible from America militarily, not just to help Israel, but to benefit America. Because if another American administration comes and stops giving weapons to Israel, it means America will be weaker and not as safe.
Right.
And it was fabulous. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine a congressman saying to a Jew, in terms of messaging about Israel, yeah, we have to work harder the next year and a half to make you guys as independent as possible,
right,
that you're producing your own weapons, your own
right,
rockets, because it's in our interest, because we know that things are going to change in American politics and we're going to be left with bad administrations, and we need you to be strong and not tied to American vetoes and embargoes, etc. That was like a mind-blowing moment when I heard that from that congressman.
Yeah, that's interesting. The minister did not touch on these issues. Okay, that's not his department. He says a lot of times, like, I'm not dealing with that. That's the defense ministry. I'm not in the defense ministry. I'm not in the treasury. I'm dealing with my thing. And he does a good job kind of staying in his lane. It's a smart thing to do because then you're not like spread thin and commenting. And he is not given to kind of opining needlessly. I respect that about him. So we really didn't touch on those issues at all in Congress. That being said, I think we all understand that, as you said very clearly, Israel, we may have an alliance with America, but we have to be self-sufficient. And you heard Tucker the other day saying, like, him and who's it, Dave Smith or Matt Walsh?
Matt Walsh, I
yeah,
guess,
they were talking, and and basically Tucker was like, well, a country that can't survive on its own has no business existing, and he's like, Israel's totally dependent on America. Walsh says, no, I don't think that's true, but that is also ammunition in the hands of our enemies. Sometimes our enemies from the right.
Interesting how he's twisting it. It's like America, that's American foreign policy. Use aid in order to tie down our allies so they're dependent on us. And Israel, because we wanted to be close allies with America, we've gone all these deals and sold our independence to have this relationship. And Tucker's going in the direction of showing, that shows how weak they are because they're dependent on us.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's the Kohen Gadol of the growing
woke right,
woke right, stowing the fire of Jew hatred and anti-Israelism within the conservative right there. Right now.
He is, and he's really undermining our claim with pro-Israel Americans that come from a religious perspective or from a defense perspective, and he's undermining that. And instead of saying, yeah, Israel's fighting our wars, he's like, Israel's drawing us into needless wars,
right?
And they don't really have self-existence, self-reliance, therefore they don't have legitimacy to exist, and he's undermining Israeli legitimacy. I still think that that's a minority on the right.
Yes,
but
it's growing.
But he is eroding the rationale for an America to bless Israel. One could say, well, maybe that will end up causing us to be more independent. But I think that the Trump administration wants to see Israel more independent in general. And at the end, it's really a question of what is Israel going to do? Like, it's up to us. It's up to us. And that's where we've come in history. Really, Israel's in a place where it's really always up to Israel now.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, it wasn't like that. Syria was big, and Egypt was big, and like all these countries, and there was the Soviets, and there was all this stuff, and we were this like little country being manhandled by these powers. It's not like that anymore. We're the big boy in the block. It's just a question of, do we want to be that big boy? Do we want to assert that power around here? Do we want to be the regional power broker? Do we want to be the defense contractor for this region? Or are we going to stay a kind of what I call a ghetto state, where we're like, I don't care about anything, just let me survive. It's not coming from like an Israel first. It's coming from a ghetto first. Like, I don't want to be powerful. I don't want to rule other people. I don't want to be in charge of other people's security. That kind of attitude is still prevalent here in Israel. I really like to see Israel grow into being a regional power that actually defends and supports other people, like the Kurds, like the Druze, like the South Lebanese army at its time. Like, we're supposed to support these people that are our allies, other minorities in this region, allies against the jihad. And if we're making the claim that we are defending the United States from jihad, well, there are the Druze that are fighting the jihad, and we should be supporting them, or the Kurds. And so I think that we have ourselves a growing up moment here. And let's hope that October the 7th will be a catalyst for that growth, and so that therefore all these deaths will not be in vain. But there's still a long way to go for Israelis to come to the conclusion that that bigger Israel is a safer Israel and a safer Middle East. It's safer for our allies, and that bigger is better.
Yeah, no, 100%. Speak about this all the time, and especially with what's going on with the Jews in Syria right now. It's like, I keep on telling people, like, reality is pushing us to go through this growth process to reclaim our natural role as being the tribe of Judeans in our ancestral homeland in the Middle East, surrounded by a 1,400-year-old genocidal religious ideology. It's like, no. God wants us to be here. God needs us to be here. That's our role. And October 7th is the catalyst, and everything going on is having reality force us to, little by little, day by day, Jew by Jew, realize, no. Yeah, we are supposed to be this regional power. We are supposed to be this Jewish people connected to God, doing what we're supposed to do to protect everyone in the region. We are supposed to be in southern Syria, which is northern Israel. We are supposed to be in southern Lebanon, which is northern Israel. Because that's the only way we're able to protect the minorities and protect Israel from the existing, that's never going away, 1,400-year ideology from the Sunnis and the Shias and the jihadists that are always going to be there. Like, we are it. Like, I'll tie this back into DC, and then we can end with that. It's like, yeah, one of the concepts we were talking about that's little by little being discussed in Washington is about autonomous allies. Like, that's an actual term that some of them are using. What's autonomous allies? Basically, Trump administration doesn't want to be the policeman of the world, right? And we're coming and saying, you're right, no worries. We're the regional power of the Middle East. Don't worry, you take care of China, right? You take care of the big wars you got to do. We'll take care of the wars in the Middle East. We're not America, but we're the regional power in the area. And the only thing stopping us from acting like that, it's not the Trump administration. It's ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's about ourselves waking up the people so that we elect the right leaders and the right parties that actually act appropriately and act like that, and then that's the process.
Well, it's not just the parties and the leaders, okay? It's also a kind of sociological consciousness here in Israel.
But I started wake up the people,
right,
to be able to right.
Like, there needs to be a shift in Israeli national consciousness.
Right.
There's like a small time consciousness here. That's at least what I've identified. And I think that, I'll give you just one example. Israelis always say, but we don't want to rule on other people. We don't want to rule on other people. And I say to them, why not? Every power rules other peoples. And sometimes when I have time, I tell people, how many nations are there in the world? Sociologists identify 3,000 nations.
How many countries?
How many countries? 193. So clearly, countries rule various nations. So you got to be willing to do that. We got to be able to rule and govern Druze, Cherkessim, pro-Israel Arabs, Muslims, pro-Israel Arab Christians, Syriacs, and all kinds of these, Bedouins, and we got to be able to govern them,
right?
And we got to find ways to govern them. But if you're not willing to do that, then you are basically putting your hand in the sand and you're letting the bad elements rule. We can't do that. We have to strive for governance.
Right, 100%. I think that's a wonderful way to end. Yishai Fleisher, international spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron, that we hope and pray will grow and grow and grow. Have there been more building permits for Hebron?
We have 30 apartments that are being built right now. Our sister organization.
We want thousands, Yishai. We want thousands.
Yes, yeah, and there needs to be. There needs to be. And again, that comes right back to what we just talked about. Does Israel want to be big?
Right.
If it wants to be big, well, Hebron is the ancestral city. Make it big. There's plenty of houses to buy and to build.
Right. That's it for today's special Pulse of Israel program, when you get a daily, belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect truth about Israel, the Jewish people, and the freedom-loving world. If you are not yet a subscriber, what are you waiting for? Go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe today. And yes, we are a donor-based operation. We're heavily censored across all the social media platforms. It's thanks to your support, large donations or small donations, that we're able to do our work. And we have so much work to be done, so much truth to inspire people with, especially the Jews. And it's thanks to your donations. So every once in a while, just click on the donate button on pulseofisrael.com. Shalom, everyone, and thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.